It took just a couple of months for Donald Trump to make half the world either hate the United States, laugh at it, or both. And I think it's time to start a series of videos where I ask AI to clean up the mess he's been making with no bias and no emotion. For example, I already asked it how to fix the situation with Greenland, and it laid out a full plan you should definitely check out after this. However, today I'm going to ask it what it thinks about the current state of the US-Canada relations, that ridiculous idea of Canada becoming the 51st state, and whether it's even possible. And by the end, I'll challenge it to lay out a plan to actually restore the relationship, but with one important rule: it can't just say, "We need a new president," or something like that. ChatGPT has to come up with a way to restore Canadian trust and fix things while Donald Trump is still Donald Trump. Mission impossible, right? Well, let's see. And as always, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and ring the bell for notifications so you never miss a new video. I upload every couple of days, and I'm pretty sure that you're going to love this channel, so go ahead and do that now, or anytime while you're watching. Alright, thanks so much, and now let's get right into the chat. And here we go. First, we're gathering up all the latest information so that it's fully up to date on what's actually going on, and once that's ready, I'll ask the first question. Alright, so it needs to be clear, straightforward, totally unbiased, no sugarcoating, no fluff, none of that. And the first question is pretty simple. How does ChatGPT see the current relationship between the US and Canada? And here's the answer. The US relationship with Canada right now, it's a complete disaster, and it didn't have to go this way. We're talking about one of America's closest allies, a neighbor, and a major trading partner. But Trump slapped a 25% tariff on most Canadian imports, plus 10% on their energy products. His justification? The US trade deficit, and claims that Canada isn't doing enough to stop illegal immigration and fentanyl. But that doesn't hold water. The fentanyl crisis mostly stems from Mexico or China, not Canada. Using it as an excuse to target trade looks more like political deflection than real policy. And this isn't new. Trump's repeatedly picked fights with allies under the banner of national security just to gain leverage in the headlines. Canada didn't stay quiet. Prime Minister Mark Carney responded with 25% retaliatory tariffs on nearly $30 billion worth of US goods and warned more could follow. He also called a snap election for April 28th, aiming to channel national frustration into political momentum. So far, it's working. His approval ratings are up, and many Canadians see his response as defending the country. In the US, the fallout is already showing. Cities like San Antonio, where nearly half of exports go to Canada, are facing serious risks. Industries like auto, aerospace, and petroleum, which depend on cross-border trade, could get hit hard. These are the same sectors Trump claims to protect. Now they're the ones most exposed. Even some Republicans in Congress are pushing back. Senators like Rand Paul and Susan Collins are challenging Trump's use of emergency powers to impose the tariffs, and may vote with Democrats to stop it. That kind of bipartisan resistance doesn't happen often, and it shows just how unpopular this move is. This isn't smart economic leadership, it's political theater. Trump wants to look strong, but he's damaging a trusted partnership, hurting both economies and creating chaos. Canada isn't the problem. Reckless moves like this are, and in the end, it's American businesses and workers who will pay the price. You know, I've noticed that ChatGPT always says it's about posturing, headlines, showing strength, or firing up his base. So I just want to ask, is it really always that simple? Like every time? Not every time, but most of the time, yes, especially when it comes to stuff like tariffs, immigration crackdowns, or public stunts that blow up the news cycle. Trump's political style is built around spectacle, not substance. He doesn't govern like a traditional policymaker, he governs like a brand. Every move is about visibility, dominance, and feeding a narrative that he alone is fighting for real Americans against the corrupt system, global elites, or weak allies. That doesn't mean he never believes in what he's doing, but the timing, the delivery, and the targets usually line up with what fires up his base or shifts attention in his favor. That's the pattern. Take this Canada move. He could have worked quietly behind the scenes to negotiate trade reforms if he truly cared about economic fairness. Instead, he blasts out a huge tariff announcement, blames Canada for fentanyl, which isn't even accurate, and creates a media storm. Why? Because chaos gets coverage, and coverage gives him power. So no, it's not always only about scoring points. Sometimes there's a deeper policy angle or personal grudge involved. But if you're asking what drives the way Trump does things, it's about control, attention, and always looking strong, even if the result is messy, reckless, or costly. That's not a guess, that's the playbook he's used for years. Alright, got it. Well, that actually does make sense. Okay, now let's move on to the next question about Canada becoming the 51st state. And here's what I want to ask. What does ChatGPT think about it? Is it even possible? And if it is, what would Trump have to do to make it happen? And here's the answer. Trump floating the idea of Canada becoming the 51st state is pure nonsense, but it's the kind of nonsense that gets people talking, which is exactly what he wants. He's not being serious when he says it, it's trolling, it's bait, it's theater. He knows it'll stir up outrage, spark headlines, and make his base laugh or cheer. That's the whole point, but let's say we take the idea seriously for a minute and break down how absurd, dangerous, and impossible it actually is. First of all, could the US technically conquer Canada? Of course it could. If it wanted to, it could flatten any country in days. The US military is the most powerful force on the planet, but that's not a strategy, that's a suicide mission for America's global image, economy, and moral standing. You don't invade your neighbor and best trading partner in the 21st century without becoming a full-blown rogue state. It would turn the US into a pariah overnight. NATO would fracture, allies would cut ties, China and Russia would pounce on the chaos. The cost wouldn't just be in dollars, it would be in trust, stability, and leadership. Now, if we're talking about peacefully making Canada the 51st state, that's even more far-fetched. First, a majority of Canadians would have to want it, and they absolutely do not. Canadians see themselves as distinctly not American. They have universal health care, a parliamentary system, stronger gun laws, a different culture. Merging into the US would mean giving all that up for a country that's politically divided and often chaotic. It would take a national referendum, constitutional changes, and agreement from US Congress. None of that is happening. Could Trump try to force it economically? Maybe he thinks if he crushes them with tariffs, sanctions, or trade pressure, they'll give in. But that's fantasy. Canada would suffer, yes, but they'd turn toward Europe, Asia, or strengthen domestic industries. No country is going to surrender sovereignty just because someone throws a tantrum over dairy exports. The only scenario where Canada becomes part of the US is science fiction. Either it's through total global collapse, where borders get redrawn by force, or it's some alternate timeline where Canadians suddenly decide democracy isn't worth protecting. Neither is happening. So when Trump says stuff like that, it's not about a real plan, it's about being provocative. It's about dominating the conversation, and in that sense it works. But as a real-world idea, it's not just unworkable, it's ridiculous. Alright, well that was pretty detailed, don't you think? Be sure to let me know in the comments what you think about all of this. But now it's time for the final request, where ChatGPT lays out a full plan that actually saved the US-Canada relationship and restored trust between the two countries. But before we get into that, now's the perfect time to double check if you're subscribed and hit the like button if you're enjoying this video. Those simple actions really help me out and keep these conversations with AI coming every single week. Thanks again, and now let's get to the final question. So, ChatGPT is going to lay out a plan that restored the US-Canada relationship and rebuilt Canadian trust based on how things stand right now, with Donald Trump still acting like Donald Trump. The key here is that it can't be some kind of plan where Trump just says no and the whole thing falls apart. It has to be something that actually works, even with him in charge. Alright, ChatGPT, go ahead and solve that mess right now. Alright, here's the challenge. Restore US-Canada relations while Trump is president and being exactly who he is. Combative, ego-driven, obsessed with winning while also fixing the trust Canadians have lost. This isn't diplomacy, this is a psychological puzzle. And if we're going to pull it off, we need a plan that works around Trump's personality while delivering real guarantees, dignity, and visibility to Canada. Here's how you do it. The North American Guardrails Plan. Not a reset, not a partnership, not something Trump can call soft. Call it guardrails. He'll hear that as locking others in. Canadians will hear it as we're protecting ourselves. Step 1. Let Trump win the fight. First, you give Trump his storyline. He needs to feel like he forced a better deal, even though you're quietly laying the foundation for a more respectful, equal relationship. The White House announces the North American Trade Reinforcement Act. After years of Canada taking advantage of outdated trade rules, we're finally holding them accountable. This deal levels the playing field, secures American jobs, and forces our neighbors to step up. What actually happens? Tariffs are rolled back in exchange for Canada agreeing to joint reviews of cross-border trade and modernized certification, just bureaucracy rebranded. Canada agrees to more cooperation on fentanyl screening, which they already do, but it lets Trump spin it as a win on the drug crisis. Trump gets to say, "I got tough, they came back to the table, we fixed it." Step 2. Give Canada structural power quietly. While Trump is taking his victory lap, Canada quietly locks in new protections that don't need Trump's personal approval but are baked into the structure of the deal. Behind the scenes, Congress and Canadian lawmakers push through a bilateral review requirement. No future tariffs or trade actions between the two countries can take effect without 90-day review and mutual notice. A permanent joint trade board, where Canada holds equal power on decisions affecting both economies. A Canadian-appointed liaison inside the U.S. Trade Representative's office, giving Canada early access to any proposed moves. These guardrails don't need Trump to like them, they just need him to sign them because he thinks they're tools to lock Canada in. Step 3. Stage the moment Canadians need to see. You give Canadians something public, a turning point they can believe in. Hold a major event, the North American Economic Leadership Summit, but not in D.C., Put it in Toronto or Calgary. Make it impossible to ignore who's hosting. At the summit, Trump shows up, declares victory. Carney speaks next, measured, clear, and firm. We've always believed in partnership, but partnership only works when it's based on mutual respect. Today is a step back toward that. Don't force a buddy moment. Let the contrast between their leadership styles say everything. Canadians don't need hugs, they need to see dignity and resolve. Step 4. Give Trump something flashy. Let's be honest, Trump needs something to tweet about. So give him a trophy. Launch the Made in North America manufacturing corridor with Trump front and center. Let him announce a new cross-border pipeline or energy partnership branded as his project, even if it was in planning for years. Let U.S. companies sign new deals with Canadian firms at the summit. He gets the cameras, Canada gets the contracts. It's a distraction, but it works. He walks away thinking this whole thing was his idea. Step 5. Lock it all down with Congress and industry. The final layer is durability. Canadians don't want one good month, they want protection from the next tantrum. So, you push through a joint legislative framework approved by both Congress and Parliament, limiting executive power over trade. Industry alliances between Canadian and U.S. manufacturers, farmers, tech firms, independent of the White House. A yearly public report on U.S.-Canada trade relations, authored by a bipartisan panel. Trump doesn't care about this stuff. As long as he gets his moment, he'll let it happen. But these steps turn the page and start rebuilding real trust. Not in him, but in the system. The end game. Trump gets to declare, they back down, I fixed everything, you're welcome. Fine, let him have it. Meanwhile, Canada walks away with tariffs lifted, real structural protection, equal say in the future, and a visible moment of respect that the public can point to and say, that's when we stood our ground and reset the terms. Trump thinks he won, Canadians feel like they were finally treated like equals, and the relationship somehow survives. That's how you rebuild trust when you're stuck with Trump. You don't try to change him. You build a system where everyone wins, even the guy who almost blew it all up. I don't even know. It just kind of feels like the whole idea is just to play to Trump, right? I mean, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Do you think it could actually work? And also, don't forget to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and check out the link in the description to support the channel directly. And while you're at it, click right here to see ChatGPT's plan to solve the situation with Trump and Greenland, just like we did today. Thanks for watching, click on this video, and I'll see you over there in just a moment.